What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and today we got our first legitimate hardcore metal act on this station. We've dabbled in leaning towards metal, but we've never actually gone full bore. And the band is Inter Arma, probably the least well-known by far act that I've done on this channel so far. But one, they have an album that's about to come out, so I've been listening to their old albums quite a bit recently. In anticipation and excitement. And two, they are probably, of the current metal bands still making music today, probably my favorite. I once read a review, and I wish I could remember where I read this review. I would give credit to the author if I did, but I don't. They called them psychedelic alchemists. And they're definitely not operating in psych rock music, but they are taking many subgenres of metal, sort of more the extreme subgenres of metal, and they're mixing them together in a way that, true alchemists do. And so they're creating something new while it is obvious while you're listening to them that, this is some black metal. We got some definite blast beats and some black metal energy. We got lots of doom, lots of sludge. We got some stoner rock grooves. We definitely have some prog elements and like the lengthier guitar solos and the sort of quieter, acoustic passages or their use of piano. We've got, what else do we have? Definitely some elements of thrash, especially more in their earlier stuff. They don't have a lot of albums out, 4 studio albums, a couple EPs, a covers album. I'm going to rank and review the 4 studio albums. I'm going to do one of their EPs, and you'll find out why when I get there. I'm not going to touch the covers album. The first EP was their second release, really good EP, but 2 of those songs they sort of redid and kind of bulked up a little and made them a little bit longer and released them on their second full-length album. So I'm not going to address that. It's this Destroyer EP, 25 minutes of excellent, excellent metal. But they're a heavy, heavy band. And they have a song on their, which I'm going to talk about, obviously, when I get to it, on their second release called The Survival Fires. And that, to me, I think perfectly captures the spirit of their music, like a post-apocalyptic world in which everything is dangerous and you should be wary of it and it's not comfortable and it is something you can't just walk down the street peacefully, but you're constantly searching for survival fires, these little pockets where you can maybe get some warmth and maybe get some food and maybe be safe for a short period of time before you have to wander out again in the desolation and the bleakness. And their music has that ominous, bleak, dark, heavy feel, with guitar solos, maybe, which aren't frequent. Guitar solos are epic moments in their songs. Maybe on an album you'll get 2, maybe 3, and they're usually pretty lengthy and they're very proggy and they go somewhere, or they're the culmination of all these other sort of musical emotions that have been built up. They have some acoustic passages which feel a little bit lighter and okay, I can breathe. I found a survival fire. I can take a moment to rest before I head out there into the darkness and the bleakness and the aggression. So they're a pretty heavy band. No clean vocals. I think I can count on one hand the number of times over the course of all their releases there's clean vocals. And usually it's a growl, it's a howl, it's a rough edge vocal. Their lyrics all have to do with that sort of post-apocalyptic vibe. Some of them are more stories, some of them about evil and man and questioning us, and those very philosophically bent sort of typical kind of black metal, heavy metal, extreme metal type lyrics. And I think they're pretty good lyrics. They're pretty poetic and they're pretty good. I have to read them to discern them because, again, it's mostly growl vocals. And like I said, they did a covers album, and it is the covers album that opens the door to get us under Frank Zappa's big note umbrella. On that covers album, there is a Tom Petty cover, Running Down the Dream. I want to say it was an 88 show, a European 88 show. I was trying to find the show and I couldn't, in which Tom Petty popped up a couple times as a secret word. They do a Prince cover on that cover album, Inter Arma does, and Prince was a secret word, I want to say in 84. And then there's also a cover of a Neil Young, Southern Man, and one of the groupies that Howard Kalin once met, had 3 hours of uninterrupted tape of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young fighting backstage at the Fillmore. So that's the connection. That covers album and the songs that Inter Arma covers that Zappa references by name, artists that Zappa references by name. I am going to do my rankings of Prince, Neil Young, and Tom Petty. Neil Young will probably happen at some point, like during the summer, when I have a whole bunch of time, because I think he now has 700 albums. Prince also has a pretty big catalog, but Tom Petty I'm going to do pretty soon. I have that list mocked up. It's in my queue, so that's coming pretty soon. But anyways, yeah, that's it. I love them. I think they're the greatest album out here, Inter Arma. Greatest metal band currently making music. One of my favorites. So again, not sure how many hardcore metal fans there are watching this channel, but if you're interested in dipping your toes into something new, I would say this is the band, man, because these are absolutely amazing albums. They're brutal, they're unapologetic, they're heavy, but I do think they pay off the more you listen to them. And if you can get used to this kind of music, or if you can find your way to like find joy in this kind of music, I think Inter Arma is probably the best band out there. So anyways, yeah, 5 releases. Not doing the covers, not doing their second album, their short little Destroyer EP. But yeah, that's it. All right. Thanks for watching. And if you stick around, I appreciate it. But here we go. On to number 5. Number 5 is their first album, Sundown. Came out, when did this come out? 2010. 8 tracks, about 50 minutes long. It's like your normal, healthy length album. And I think this is the one in which they're sort of, you can hear the influences in their purest form, or like when they go into black metal, it sounds more like black metal than later things when it'd be mixed up with like other type subgenres. The thrash elements are a little more dominant here than they would be on later albums. You still get a lot of doom and sludge, though not quite as much as you would. And you still have a lot of proggy elements. Really just a great debut album. Nothing wrong with this. It's just 5, mainly because it's not as, I don't think maybe they're taking as many chances or as confident, or that sort of like post-apocalyptic doom sound is not as prevalent. The band is a quintet. I didn't message that. I did not mention that already, but I think they're all excellent musicians and excellent performers, but it is the drummer who drives the energy on so many of these songs, bringing a very, I don't want to say restrictive drum sound, but he's very much playing drums that define sort of the confines of a lot of these songs. And the band is, layering things on top of them or working around them. Or he's establishing a very marchy type progression, a very repetitive type march thing, and they're kind of laying things over that. And the drummer's not as dominant here, but he's definitely stepping forward a lot of the times. Couple instrumentals on here. I think it opens up with a nice soft little piano thing. Not soft, like it's interesting. Even when they go into the piano or they go into the sort of acoustic guitars, it still doesn't feel comfortable. It still feels like, oh yeah, this is a false front. We're going somewhere scary after this. So it opens up with this song called Prologomenon. And that just goes right into the first song, All Time Low, which definitely starts off with a little more black metal energy, kind of slides into some thrash at some point. Excellent song. 2000 Years, another just really aggressive, a slightly more proggy thing. Hallucinatorium, probably the more intense, thrashiest thing on here. Epicenter, The Reclamation, another fantastic song. And then the last 2 songs, a shorter, more like instrumental number called Prognosticate, which goes in to an all-time classic metal prog epic, Sundown. And the song almost starts like, it feels like you're watching a sundown. I always imagined that I was watching this from, I don't know if anybody ever saw the show Land of the Lost. There was a movie, but it was a TV show in the 70s. Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition when the greatest earthquake ever known takes them back in time to the land of the dinosaurs. And they end up living in this cave, and that's high up on a mountain that they could escape from the T-Rex that would terrorize them. And I imagine that they're kind of watching the sundown from this spot. So it's a beautiful sundown, but what's taking place underneath it is like dangerous and deathly, and it's not like a comforting thing, because not only is it like below the sun is dinosaurs, are dinosaurs, but once the sun goes down, it's even a more dangerous place. So it's not one of those like comforting sundown type things. It's like unsettling, but almost the entire thing is just this epic prog guitar solo that just goes on and on and on. It's like a 12-minute song, slowly builds towards this guitar solo. And if there's a disappointing aspect of the song, is that the guitar solo goes down just as the sun goes down. And it doesn't really finish or conclude as much as it just kind of fades away into the darkness. But it is just an almost cathartic ending to an album that is aggressive and heavy hitting, with moments of, I don't want to say relief, but moments where every once in a while things get a little bit calmer or a little bit like quieter and you feel like you can breathe, but then it just hits hard again. Easily they're more I think palatable album. I think the easiest thing maybe to jump into their world and give you a sense of what they're capable of. Still an excellent album, but of the five I'm going to review, it is my number 5, their debut album, Sundown. Number 4 is their 4th album, Sulphur English. This came out in 2019, and it's only number 4 because I haven't listened to it as much as the other 3. It's an S tier album. It is a fantastic metal album. I have no complaints, 0 complaints about this album. It's about 70 minutes long, and it seems like the first 5 songs, which are just over 30 minutes, the second 4 songs, which are just over 30 minutes, definitely feel like they're like each halves of an album, right? I have the CD, so I don't think vinyl was, I don't think you can have 35 minutes on vinyl, right? But it definitely feels like there's a first half, and though the songs aren't necessarily thematically related, the way they ebb and flow feel like one piece, and then the second half feels like a second piece. The entire album opens up with this like drone, like this like piercing, like an alarm broke, almost like you're watching a movie and it's like the screen is black and then the narrator wakes up and realizes there's this droning sound and he gets up to check it out, and like within the next 30 to 45 seconds bombs start going off and there's destruction everywhere and you're like, oh no, I'm in the middle of like the apocalypse. That's what the music feels like. And then the next 2 songs sound like he's just out there exploring this apocalypse, and there's war and there's demons and things are blowing up and attacking him, and we got some thrash and some black and lots of doom, and it's just kind of chaotic, but like purposeful, like written chaos, right? It's definitely, written chaos. It's not like spontaneous chaos, right? But it just feels heavy and violent and kind of uncomfortable. The 4th song, Howling Lands, it feels like the armies of this apocalypse are now on the march, and this one has a little more forward momentum, or at least sort of a march momentum, that sort of like marching energy, but again, violent and aggressive. And then that is followed up by a song called Stillness, which kind of brings down the energy for a while. You get a nice little proggy, like some nice little like, I think some steel guitar, slide guitar playing in the middle. You get some doom riffs in there, and then the whole thing culminates, kind of takes the entire energy of the first half hour and like puts it all into a guitar solo, and that guitar solo kind of releases it all and kind of helps conclude and wrap up this first half of the album. Second half of the album opens up with another short little instrumental with like some calmer but not comfortable feeling piano driven sort of instrumental that goes right into one of their best songs called The Atavis Meridian. This is a very relentless attack, a very proggy vibe with some very proggy guitars for about 5 minutes. That after about 5 minutes, you get what is like a breath of fresh air. Kind of the drums kind of drop out, and it almost feels like, okay, I can breathe. But again, things aren't comfortable. You know it's going to return to the craziness. It eventually does return to the craziness. It gets super heavy at the end, finishes in just like a culmination of chaos and energy and metal attack. That's followed up by a song called Blood on the Lupines, which definitely has a slower part in it, definitely gives you a chance to kind of breathe a little more, definitely brings the energy way down. But again, you get these sort of doom attacks throughout towards the latter half of it. you definitely get these just sort of bursts of aggression that don't ever let you really just sit back and enjoy the 8 minutes. Like the latter half of this is definitely getting aggressive again. Before we go into the title track, Sulphur English, which is another one of those, starts off very proggy with this really nice prog, repetitive for prog guitar part, but it just attacks really, really hard before you get sort of a dropout in the middle that lets you like breathe easier, but it's not a full dropout. And then you just get these other sort of black metal doom attacks before everything again wraps up and sort of releases you at the end. But again, it's just the entire album does a really good job of playing with dynamics, yet at the same time, not ever really making you feel all that comfortable. You're still in a really destructive world, but you can find moments where like you don't feel that your life is as threatened as it is in other times. Just an absolutely fantastic, relentlessly inventive, just amazing sort of alchemist sort of version of so many subgenres of metal. Just absolutely beautiful. Just an almost perfect album. But it's my number 4 because they got 3 better albums that you should probably check out. But that's number 4, Sulphur English. Number 3 is their second full release, 2013's Sky Burial. I want to say that this album, the one that's going to be next on the list, and Sulphur English, were all my number 1 releases of the years they were released. So we're talking, these are rankings of great albums to my ears. My only complaint about this is I do think the sequencing on this is off, and I think it would be a better album if it was sequenced differently. And I'll get to that in a second. This is the only one that opens up with your full-on relentless attack from the beginning. You don't have like an instrumental that kind of like, oh, look, it's going to be gentle. Oh, no, it's not. This just hits hard from the beginning with some black metal energy, some elements of thrash before we go off into all these different areas. And it is the first song that is the Survival Fires. That is the opening track on this. And it very much, you feel like you're in like, you're walking through like, I always think of the movie, it's a comedy, but The End of the World, or This Is the End, the one with the people who do all the, now I can't think of their names. You know, the funny people, Seth Rogen and all his people, where like the end of the world comes and like the aftermath, they're trying to survive and there's all these monsters and destruction. It feels like that kind of scene, but on like a not funny vibe. But that first song is just this unrelentless 10-minute attack. That's followed by 2 songs with the same title, The Long Road Home, parentheses, Iron Gate, which is an instrumental that sets up this theme that the second song, The Long Road Home, plays with that same theme, but just in a little more like, the first one is a little more acoustic-y, second one's a little metal-y, develops into this really amazing guitar solo that just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds for like the entire build from the beginning to the end of the guitar solo is like 8 minutes long. And then the last 2 minutes is just this full-on relentless blast beats, black metal, inspired attack that just completely like, I don't know, it's like The Long Road Home felt like it was when you got home, it was going to be a good thing. Like that first 8 minutes is like the journey. But then when you get home, like it's chaos. Like things are obviously not going as they should be. It's just it's relentlessly brutal. And my only complaint is I understand why they put it after the opening track, because the opening track is like a relentless 10 minutes. And so you get this like instrumental that kind of definitely is one of the softer things they do, for lack of a better word. But I feel like there are a couple other songs on this album that could have gone after the Survival Fires, and then maybe pushed Long Road Home further back on the album. And I think it coming later, it's, you know, because the whole thing itself is about 14 minutes with the first part going into the second part. And I think it just feels a little more like needed if you put it later in the album. Doesn't feel like it needed to go as early in the album as it does. Fourth song, another amazing song. The Long Road Home and this song, Destroyer, were both on the EP. This is a longer version of it. This one is a little more bass heavy than some of their other stuff, sort of a lower end intensity, really repetitive proggy riff that just kind of drones and attacks and hypnotizes you, but in a really aggressive way. Then you get this weird section where it feels like bees are attacking, really, really, really violent bumblebees or wasps or something, before again it just kind of goes off in this really relentless prog attack. Just another one of their more brutal but cathartic, just amazing songs. Then you get the fifth song is called Blood, apostrophe S blood, and this is a very drum heavy. The drummer is driving the energy on this, and the band members are kind of playing around this relentless drum pattern that is laid down. You get Westward, another kind of drony, hypnotic, kind of proggy type thing that just kind of keeps on attacking and keeps on attacking and never gives up. Love Absolute, yeah, maybe it's a gentler song. Not gentle, but this is another sort of soft instrumental. And then the closing song, the very proggy, again, another just relentless song, Sky Burial, just an epic way to close this album. 13 plus minutes of like very sort of, they do a good job of letting like the first 4 or 5 minutes of these songs, Westward and this, kind of just drive the same riff over and over, kind of into the ground, you know, while maybe the drummer's doing other interesting things and the vocals are singing, before they take that energy and like push it into other areas, kind of bring it down for a while and then build it back up, and it just like crazy epicness at the end. Another just fantastic, almost perfect album. And if I could change one thing, I would probably go Survival Fires, put Westward second, Love Absolute, Destroyer, Sublud, then The Long Road Home duo would be like the penultimate 2 tracks, and then close with Sky Burial. I think that works better as a track listing, but either way, it's still a stupidly fantastic album. My number 3, their second, Sky Burial. Number 2 is their third full-length release, 2016's Paradise Gallows. This was my number 1 album in 2016. Another album that I think is just sequenced absolutely perfectly. Again, incredibly hard-hitting. A lot more doom is seeping into it, but very thrashy doom. A lot more kind of sludgy type. A lot of like riffs that are just kind of just sledgehammering themselves into the ground. But I think over the course of the album, the sort of, you know, the way they will like pair their songs together, the energy just flows so perfectly. Again, we open up with like an instrumental to kind of set the stage, make you feel like things are going to be a little more peaceful than they are, before we get the first 2 songs, An Archer in the Emptiness and Transfiguration, which are both very much drum driven. It seems like these feel like a little more like actual, I'm not going to say none of these feel like songs, but they also almost feel like a couple of them have actual riffs and have actual something that sembles like structures, but then they always abandon that and have a lot of just like this doom energy, and then elements of black metal will just seep in there. And so the first like 20 minutes or so, about 18 minutes of this is just this relentless, one of those, just this relentless attack of just like all of these different energies just coming at you, just pummeling you in the eardrums. And then the 4th song is called Primordial Wound, which kind of sounds like a primordial wound, just like this, like the primordial soup, like the negative elements of that, just like scratching away at the surface of something. And it just feels like this like relentless like music that over the course of the 10 minutes just creates this like wound that is so raw and so deep. It cuts down to like the very nerve and very like core of what you are. And that goes into something, and that kind of that goes into something called the Summer Drones, which definitely isn't as droney as I think Primordial Wound is, but definitely has this almost like dun, dun, dun drive that kind of feels droney, but also feels a little more like the summer energy makes it a little more uplifting. It's still, you know, some pretty heavy stuff, but the vibe of it, I think, is a little more lighter and a little more like, oh, it's summer. Like things just feel a little bit better than they did before now that this wound is starting to heal. That's followed by a song called The Potomac. They're from Virginia. An instrumental, which is probably the most straight melodic thing they've done. Almost sounds like this could have been on like a Baroness album, like it could be straight off Baroness's Blue record. that kind of like dual guitar melody lead. That goes into a song called The Paradise Gallows, which very much seems like it's taking this melodic energy and letting it simmer for a while before they start to slowly turn up the heat and things get a little bit crazier and a little bit like maddening before we go into what I think is by far the highlight of the album. One of the best things they've ever done. The name says it all. Violent Constellations. And yeah, man, it is just another absolutely brutal, relentless attack for like 12 minutes of just like everything they have thrown into the mixer and just hitting you hard. And then that closes out with a short little song called Where the Earth Meets the Sky, which is like an acoustic. It's not an acoustic little ditty. It's very much an acoustic sort of metal type vibe. On the CD, there's an whole bunch of extra time at the end of this, Where the Earth Meets the Sky, and then there's a slight little jam at the end of it, which always reminds me of, I think it's Cherry Bomb. It sounds like a Runaway song, like a little instrumental throwaway thing that they threw in at the end of there. It's like 2 minutes long, but that is what is at the end of that crazy track at the end. It's that little song. But yeah, this is just another perfect album. Hits hard and starts off with like a little instrumental that tricks you. Again, you don't feel comfortable. It's not beautiful music, but again, it's a little bit softer. 2 songs that hit you hard. They kind of bring things down and play with dynamics a little more. Those second 2, then we get really nice melodies. We kind of build things back up. Then we end with Violent Constellations, again, just attacking you with everything they have for like 12 relentless minutes. Another absolutely perfect album. My number 2, Paradise Gallows. On to my favorite. And number 1 is an EP, The Cavern. 1 song, The Cavern. It's a 1-song EP, but that song is 45 minutes long, over 45 minutes long. And it's one story. I think it's about a story about somebody like crawling out of a cavern, like he's gonna die, and he's crawling across the desert and he's gonna die. And at the very end, I think he crawls into a cavern and he meets a woman. That woman is played by the lead singer from Windhand, a fantastic doom metal band. This is probably their most consistently doom-centric song. Like the first good quarter of this album maybe is just this like very repetitive doom riff that just kind of goes over and over and slowly builds. They eventually abandon that, do return to it at the end, but once they abandon it, you go through all these other different genres. There is an absolutely beautiful sort of, I don't know if beautiful is the right word, but it just feels like such a cathartic, proggy sort of epic guitar solo towards the latter third that feels like, I want to compare it to like anytime there's a guitar solo on any of these albums, it almost feels like a Pink Floyd, David Gilmour type thing, where like Gilmour's always present, but like when he steps up in solos on albums like The Wall, those solos are epic. Hey You, epic. Comfortably Numb, epic. Like Another Brick in the Wall. He's not dropping guitar solos in every song, but when he gets around to do it, oh yeah, you got to check it out because it's not just like 8 bars, whatever you're going to do. It's like thought out and planned out, and it's like such an integral part of why each song is good. And this has just an absolutely fantastic guitar solo dropped in towards the latter half. We get some clean vocals on this for a change. But yeah, this is just, it is a journey. It is like, I think a lot of their songs, as I've kind of referred to, I think a lot of these albums could be 2 songs, and like instead of having half a second or a second of silence, you can blend these songs together. Like I think you could take the both halves of Paradise Gallows and just have 2 songs. Both halves of Sulphur English and just have 2 songs. A couple of the songs on Sky Burial could be combined into like maybe less songs. This could have been divided into 5 different songs and it would have made sense. But they didn't do that. They just put it together as one big, epic, completely entertaining journey that takes you from starts in this one area of metal, really works that area for a good long time before like, hey, we're now off on a journey. We're going other places. The lyrics sort of mimic that journey, and it is just an absolute masterpiece of an album. It's called an EP, but it's 45 minutes long. And almost every Dylan album I reviewed was not as long as this EP. So I'm counting it. It's my number one. And just to be clear about one thing, it's only one song. So if I say do a video about like my top 10 songs, even though they don't have a lot of songs, it's like half of them. Yeah, you might see this on that list again somewhere, oddly enough, to give that away. But yeah, a fantastic album. Like, I think you can even start with this. If you're interested in like checking out this band, I think this is a good place to start. Because it really is, I think it's the most, maybe the least intimidating of all their albums, but in no way is it like a lesser album or a weaker album, or no way is there anything wrong with it. It is stupidly good. My number one Inter Arma album, The Cavern. That's it, people. My opinion of my ranking, my listing, my order of Inter Arma's albums so far. They do have another album I think is supposed to be released either like soon. This is we're like end of November 2022. I think it's supposed to come out. They just released sort of a statement saying, hey, thanks for your interest. We're working on something. It's coming out soon. So I think they just announced a tour date somewhere overseas. So maybe they're going to like try out some material there, and then they're going to be in the States playing soon. And that new album's going to come out, and I will review it and put it on the list and add it to the list when it comes out. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you stuck around so long, people, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share, but most importantly, if you have any interest, go check out this band. I'm going to try to get some more metal on here just because I'm a huge metal fan. And now that I've found a way to get more bands under the umbrella of Frank Zappa's Big Note, cover songs, people, I'm going to try to start doing some more just for my own sake because I like talking about it. But anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, all that stuff. Let me know what I messed up on. I'm sure I called things doom that are not doom and black. You know what? I don't really care about the subgenre stuff. All I know is like, this is some great music, people. Some fantastic music. So listen and enjoy or not enjoy, but let me know what you think either way. And thanks for watching. Peace. Take care.